Whenever it comes to seeing anything new for your favorite Final Fantasy game, if your favorite Final Fantasy isn't Final Fantasy VII, you pretty much don't receive, well, anything. Unlike their older PlayStation 1 brother, Final Fantasy 8 and 9 haven't received much of Square Enix's love and attention over the years. But it looks like things might be changing for Final Fantasy 9 fans in a very big way soon. As it is currently being reported by website Kidscreen, Final Fantasy 9 is apparently receiving an animated series. According to the report, this animated series will be handled by Cyber Group. The French company will not only be producing the show, but they'll also be handling worldwide distribution, licensing, and merchandise. With, as you can probably imagine, Square Enix taking their cut off the top. The CEO, Pierre Sisman, says the company is putting the finishing touches on a Project Bible, and plans to begin pitching it to broadcasters in the coming months. Also, the episode count and length have not been finalized at this time. However, the goal, according to the CEO, is to begin production by the end of 2021, or beginning of 2022, meaning it's actually going to be quite a bit of time before we actually see this show. The CEO saying, quote, "The games have a strong co-viewing potential. For those who do know Final Fantasy IX, this will be an introduction, and for the many who don't, this will immerse them in a universe they love." Either that's a typo or he completely misspoke. I think he meant for those who don't know this universe, it'll be an introduction and, well, whatever. In either case, a Final Fantasy IX anime is in fact coming, it seems. And it's also said to be targeting a younger audience too, which kind of suggests that certain characteristics of Zidane might be toned down. Then he says that Final Fantasy is a good fit for that demographic. Never let this man take a look at Final Fantasy 16. Look, we're probably going to be calling this the Final Fantasy IX anime quite a lot, but it's important to note that this is not an anime. Again, this is being developed by a French studio. This is actually a cartoon and not an anime, which normally I would not pick any bone with. Series like Netflix's Castlevania and Invincible are some of the best entertainment you can watch right now. It's also important to note how young the demographic they're targeting is, meaning that video game boomers like me and you probably will feel alienated by this one. Not to mention that judging by what Cyber Group Studios has put out in the past, this is pretty likely to have some goofy looking art style. And with it saying that production will begin by the end of 2021 or beginning of 2022, I'm anticipating that the very earliest we could even possibly see this is 2023, and probably even more likely 2024. Of course, Square Enix is absolutely no stranger to making animated content based on their IPs, things such as Final Fantasy XV Brotherhood, The Last Order, and even now there is another rumored Final Fantasy VII anime that might be hitting Netflix. And on top of all of that, Final Fantasy XIV is set to have a live action in the works, although we have not heard anything from that project in quite some time, and that's likely due to the pandemic slowing down production. And it's not just Final Fantasy either. Kingdom Hearts is set to be having an animated series coming to Disney+, and Dragon Quest just recently had Dragon Quest Your Story. And you guys know that normally I'm not a big fan of multimedia projects. However, something like this I really don't mind, as this more or less will be a retelling of Final Fantasy IX in animated format. Though there are definitely a lot of questions, like considering its demographic, what are you gonna do with Kuja's design? To say his costume is going to have to be revised is probably an understatement. And I honestly think it'll be really nice to see a younger audience getting into Final Fantasy. I can honestly see this one being a total miss already, just given some of the early details. But I'm going to keep a positive mindset about it until we see what exactly it is that they're cooking up. It's also worth noting that some of the members of the Final Fantasy IX dev team not too long ago said that they would love to see some sort of sequel or remake to Final Fantasy IX. So you know what? Who knows? Maybe this is all the beginning of one big Final Fantasy IX resurgence. In either case, I want to know what you think in the comments below. Shout out to patron Kirsty Thomas and the rest of the Ultima community.